Madecraft is developing and investing in the next generation of learning content. Learn more at onlymadecraft.com.
Hi, welcome to the 1 in 20 show, where we're looking to find the next 1 in 20 successful individuals who are pursuing their passions so that you can too. And today we're joined by Kenny. Kenny Liu is an actor from San Francisco, California. He started out in the tech world at a startup that was eventually purchased by Google. Soon after, he decided to pursue a lifelong dream and goal in acting. He moved to Los Angeles and began to book roles in many films. He is known for roles like Gohan in Dragon Ball Z: Light of Hope, Lancer from The Long Road Home, and Zhu Xuesan in the upcoming film Midway, recounting World War II. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Thank you for being here.
I'm very happy to be here too.
I'm super excited to just dive into everything that you got, and it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. There's so much going on, and love to talk about it.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, I wanted to kind of start. I always start in a similar way, in that everybody kind of has that first launching off point. Yeah. And that journey that began at probably a young age. So I wanted to ask you kind of what kicked off that whole journey for you into acting, into stunt work, into all of that stuff.
So it's kind of a really long story for me. I'm Chinese American, and I was an actor ever since I remember. I was the lead of, I don't know how many plays, a dozen plays in middle school. I was like the kid that was the actor. And then as soon as high school hits, I don't know what it was, but maybe it was, growing up being Asian or something, but something told me in my head that, like, this is not a career. And I completely turned my back on it without even a fight. Didn't talk to my parents about it. I was just like, got to get serious about my life, and started pursuing the sciences and engineering. And that's basically what I did until I graduated from college. And then it was after I graduated that I was like, wow, I'm so bored on the weekends. Let's do something I used to love doing, and audition for stuff on Craigslist.
Wow, Craigslist. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it was just a stroke of luck that really got me back into it, because I booked, fortunately, a legit film. It was like a non-union thing, but it was at least paid, and I got cast as the lead of a feature. And there's this acting coach on set who was just taking care of me, and he was like, after we finished shooting this movie, he was like, look, I think you got some chops. I want to help you. And this guy was just like, I just kind of I used to be an actor myself a long time ago, and I want to help you. And he had me go to his house like once a week, and he just worked with me, like monologues. And then from there, I got picked up by one of the best agencies in the Bay Area where I grew up. And then from there, it just kept snowballing. It became a side part-time job while I was working full-time as an engineer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then from there, my full-time job was an engineer, and I helped us start up a company. So we got invested in by Google and all kind of good stuff. And then working with Google for a couple of years, our company got sold. And then from there, I was like, well, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And I was like, well, I want to see what this acting thing really is. And so that's when I packed up, moved down here to LA about 5.5 years ago.
Wow. That's amazing. That's such an interesting, you normally hear the story of the desperate Hollywood artist who leaves from, Midwest or wherever it is to come here. Yeah. It has no plan, that's what I hear oftentimes, but your story is totally different in the sense that you had a career.
Completely.
So what kind of, it sounds like you were prompted to leave because you had some experience as well, like after the buyout and whatnot. But what kind of continued to fuel that fire, like after you were a part of a big corporate thing?
It was that.
Was it?
Yeah, it was working after I loved being in a startup because you have so much responsibility and you felt like you owned your own destiny. And then as soon as we got sold and moved into this much larger company, it was like, well, I'm back to being a cog in a machine again. And I was like, well, I finished this thing that I wanted to do, which is do a startup. Yeah. And then that was when I decided that I wanted to pursue acting for real. It's so interesting because so many Asian American actor friends that I know had some kind of career before this, and not just some kind of career. They were very profitable. You know, like I was being offered like easily into the six figures, and I had to. It's such a different decision than if you're moving out, being desperate and young and not without a plan. My plan was right in front of me. My parents were happy. My health insurance was there. Like I was going to have a family, get married and all that stuff. And I saw all of that at this edge of this pit. I remember and going like, wow, I don't want this. Like, this is not what my life needs to be or wants to be. And so I had to turn my back on all of that. And that, I think, is much harder than if you just needed to escape from somewhere.
Yeah.
It was a really tough decision to make.
Yeah. So what was the emotion that drove you through pursuing it? Like, was it pretty overwhelming after you had kind of got bought out and moved on from that?
It was a lot of soul searching. And what actually did it for me was Jeff Bezos of Amazon. He's got like this regret minimization network or framework or something. And he just basically said that, like, I asked myself, which decision am I going to regret more if I don't do this or if I don't do that? And that actually made it very clear cut for me. Yeah. And that was it, because, when you're facing with financial security or, taking the first real journey of your life, then what are you going to do?
Right.
And for me, like, once I framed it that way, then it became very clear.
Yeah. And you were handed an opportunity that I feel might be lacking in a lot of just because of life. A lot of people, will get in that career job and never have a chance to come out. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Or they get settled into the stability that it brings.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had the lucky situation of being able to have that for a while.
It
And
was
then
like
coming
I bought
out
my
of it.
freedom.
Yeah, you came out of it, which is amazing. And something that I actually you've touched on it already, but something I've been noticing as a huge strength to Hollywood is the representation of Asian actors that are coming in, and it's changing. It's changing the industry in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
So I know that that's like a staple for you and like your career.
Yeah.
So what did that mean to you when you left and you started pursuing acting and all of that?
That's a really great question. It meant a lot because it wasn't just me that I felt like I was filling in by taking this step for myself, but also because I felt like I was doing it for all the guys that I knew that were engineers and they wanted to be writers, like so many of them have some kind of side hobby, like whether it's like being a part of a game that they want to program or being a writer or being a singer-songwriter or something. So many like super talented friends of mine that I knew, especially the Asian American ones that I knew in engineering school, they didn't see it as something possible for them. And so in a way, when I took that step, they were like, wow, I can't believe you're doing it. And I had no idea that they were feeling that, until I took it and I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. Like, I don't care if I don't make any money for 10 years. At least I gave a shot. I gave myself a shot. And I think that was it.
Yeah. And I've heard it said too, that there's similar to a startup, there is an incredible amount of energy that goes into an adrenaline that goes into a move, like saying, I'm going to ditch everything. I'm going to go to Hollywood, or in Hollywood, I'm going to do something different that hasn't been done. It happens in every front of the entire field. Yeah. And what's very interesting about representation in different ways in, ethnicity, in race and in all that. Yeah. There is such a power in seeing a story. And this is what's going along with your movie Midway that's coming out that you're in. There is just such a power to showing that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think we want to see our heritage and stories on screen?
I think it's identity, it's belonging, it's feeling like you're a part of something greater than just yourself. Yeah, Midway for me is that, because when you're an actor, you get to play as another person. And something that I always struggled with was, like when I was growing up, I hear all these stories of my grandpa doing this. And if you were have any heritage in Asia, then it was just turmoil there for hundreds of years. And you hear all these stories of these great things your grandpa did, like being so poor and not having anything to eat, like having maggots in his rice and stuff. And then like you feel so privileged and spoiled to grow up like in America.
Yeah.
And for me, for Midway especially, I'm playing this guy who basically grew up in the same era as my grandfather. He's the same age. And so being able to experience that through the work that I put in, and trying to like exist and live his story was something that was deeply fulfilling. And that's just for me. But then being able to put it out there for other people to see it and to have people recognize that, wow, like all these Chinese people died during World War II, and we don't really talk about that, you know, the sacrifices that were made, because those people's homeland was where these battles were being fought.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so exhilarating and why it feels so fresh, because it's a fresh story. And in a similar way, that's a startup too. You know, it's like taking something old but twisting it and giving like a new perspective.
Right.
And I think that's what is exciting, not just for Asian Americans, but also for anybody that wasn't aware of it before. Because honestly, I didn't much growing up, you know? And I think it's just really exciting to share that, because it's a bridging of these experiences that I think all of us relate to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important, I think, to know where you come from. And I think you could probably speak to that from an acting sense. Like, I've heard it said too, that the amount of effort that you put in to a role to be able to flesh it out and to be able to say, wow, I'm playing a person who lived, acted and breathed in his own life. Like he did his own thing. And every day brought what he had to the table and made a part of history. And as an actor, you get to do that. Yeah. What kind of character study did you have to do for this role that you played?
A lot. For this one, what's really wild is that when I first booked this role, you know, you do your research, and then, I mean, I speak English a little bit more comfortably than Chinese. And so I Googled him, and I found like maybe one news article from 10 years ago. And then I was like, wow, how am I going to find more about this guy? So then I started doing it in Chinese, and there's books about this person.
Yeah.
He's like incredibly famous, like incredibly well known for being a pivotal part of the World War II effort.
And a war hero at that, right?
Yeah, and a war hero, basically, even though he doesn't really fight, like he just ends up saving somebody simply because he happened to speak English in some rural town. And yeah, so then that to me is incredible, and it's crazy. Yeah.
I think something to bounce off of that too is you look at history, and you look at how history is a part of film. Just today, even I saw a screening of the new Judy Garland film that's coming out about her life.
Oh yeah.
Post all of her amazing career and kind of how she bounced back. And you just realize there's so much more to the scope of acting in Hollywood than is surfaced. That's kind of what a drive for me has been toward doing this is I know that there's more than what goes into the press junkets that people do in the sense of promoting, like on Fallon or on, you know, they don't really get to say enough about, you know, they don't have time. There's no time.
Right.
But what's really interesting to have you in this place as well is just to hear your thoughts about your industry. You know, Hollywood's so huge. There's so much about it. So what kind of would you say to like the people that are kind of trying to come up through the ropes? You came up through it a different way than I've heard before. But you know, what would you say to those people that are trying to pursue acting specifically and moving here and all that?
Oh man, there's so much to say. You know, it depends on where you're coming from. You know, the biggest thing though is persistence. You know, you just can't give up because there's so many close calls you're gonna have. You're gonna think that your life is gonna change the next day, and then something happens. I've walked on set going like, okay, I've got this great role. And then like they even made me fill out the paperwork. And then they were like, oh, by the way, new director came in yesterday. Your part got cut. The day of, I'm on set. I've had that happen. Stuff like that. I've had films where I was like, I hope I'm in this movie. And then a buddy of mine is like an editor and he's doing the 3D conversion of this film. And he tells me that I'm in it. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. I've been sitting on these pictures for a year now. I don't want to share with anybody until like I know for sure I'm in this thing.
Yeah.
And I find I'm in it. I share all these pictures, get all these likes on social media, and then I buy tickets to the movie theater with my friends, and then we're watching it together. And then I'm like, "Where's my part?" And then my part passes, and I'm like, "Wait, maybe they save my face till later." Nope. Movie's over. Maybe it's in the post credits. Nope.
Oh my gosh. Man, that's the tragic thing. I know that's a part of it.
That's it. Yeah.
Something I think that's challenging is to like, there's no formula. I've noticed. Like
no formula.
There's no formula to one path or another.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at what point do you look at, like, do you evaluate? I know this is like, especially as an actor, I've understood now that there's so much that goes into the mental stability that you're able to have. Because there's so much of like, okay, am I good enough for this? That's one side. And then the other is, how long do I have to wait?
Right.
How have you kind of balanced those things over time?
Fortunately for me, I've been financially stable, and I knew that I had a pretty long runway, which is kind of a part of the plan to begin with. But then even outside of that, I really had to dig deep and really figure out the reasons for why I was doing this. There were definitely periods, especially early on, where I was like much more selfish than I am now. And I'm like, I want to be the first one to make it. I want to do this and do that. And now for me, I've kind of settled into this place, especially with good teachers and good mentors that made me realize that I'm in this because I'm here to tell a story. I'm here to become a part of something much bigger than myself. And once you have that purpose in mind, and obviously you've got enough to eat and stuff, then you ask yourself, is this something that you want to do for the rest of your life, even if you don't make it? And if that answer is yes, then you gotta do it. And then at that point, you can find yourself some inner peace. Because otherwise, if you're doing it because if this next project I book it and it's gonna change my life, how much pressure are you putting on yourself when you go in there? You got to go in there 3-4 times sometimes, like say for the same part, different people, everything.
Yeah.
And it's going to kill you. And so that is where I think you're going to have to do a lot of really deep digging to find some peace with yourself. Otherwise, this job isn't for you.
Right. There's a resilience, I think, that is associated that is a real misnomer. And I think something I've tried to unearth a lot with people I have on is just that, like what you said, the relentlessness that goes into it.
Yeah.
But also the idea that you kind of have to be called into it in a sense. Like there's an unheard of calling that is associated with attacking it full on and never giving up.
Yeah.
And that's the insane, crazy thing that gets people here. And it's that dream that doesn't go away for people that keeps them up at night. Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking about that the other day, the importance of all those unseen hours that people don't ever see.
Yeah.
All the self-tapes, all the auditions,
all the rejections.
Is it worth it? And I think in the end you would say it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question to ask yourself. People, look at all the stars and like, oh, I want to be on that red carpet. I want to be on that big screen. But the real question is like, are you okay with getting rejected by your self-tapes, feeling like you killed it in an audition and then not even get a call back for it over and over and over again? Because that's what the real work is. You're a professional auditioner. That's the job. And then if you are okay with that, then you might have a chance at, being on the red carpet and being on the big screen.
And your perspective changes, I'm sure, and this is what I'm gathering too. Your perspective over time will change when you understand, and then maybe it doesn't hurt you as bad when there's 1,000 no's in the one yes.
That's if you have that inner growth, but that's critical to have that growth as you're going through it. I think because then I think everything is a journey, and just moving here was a piece of the journey. Finding this inner peace was part of your journey. But you're constantly growing. And that way, like, let's say you do finally get lucky and get that shot of yours, you're ready for it. You're ready for everything that comes after that, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's take it to a break. We'll continue kind of this train of thought. Yeah. But thank you for pouring in so far, and we'll be right back. Hey, guys, this episode is sponsored by Madecraft. Madecraft is looking to develop the next generation of leaders through making learning content for platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook. It's a really great tool that you can use to expand on your skill set, kind of like how we talk about on this show, and take your skills to the next level. So be sure to check out their website at onlymadecraft.com and be sure to subscribe to our channel, Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. All right, welcome back. I wanted to kind of go off of what we were talking about earlier. We were talking a bit about Asian American representation, and over the break, we just talked probably 5-10 minutes even on a lot of things, but on the fact that like there is a huge amount of Asian Americans in the U.S., in Los Angeles, and you're just now seeing a lot more of them come into the industry.
Yeah.
So speak to kind of what that movement is. Like, why is this happening? Why have we not represented Asians well in media?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and something that I guess is a little interesting to touch on, because it was something growing up that I was even kind of unaware of. You know, I mentioned earlier about, you know, identity and being Asian American, and one thing that I believe that we kind of had a crisis in was that we never saw ourselves being reflected in the greater fabric of America.
Yeah.
You know, we're like consistently the other person, like don't speak English. Like the only hat that people have to hang their hat on for Asians a lot of times is like kung fu and math. And, you know, like it's to a degree where, you know, people I've gotten every celebrity on the planet for Asian. I've been called Bruce Lee. I've been called Jackie Chan. I've been called Jet Li. I've been called John Cho. I've been called Daniel Day Kim. All of them. Yeah. And like, I don't see that as a malicious thing. I see that as people just have such little understanding of who we are as a people. And not even that Asian Americans like even represent one culture. You know, it's in fact, we're like a whole planet over there, you know, like we're so different. And it's that rift that I really want to bridge. Because anybody that has gone to school with somebody who's Asian American knows that, like, you know, we're so different. And we've got this massive culture that I feel like we've kind of been hiding in the shadows. Yeah. And a lot of people take that to you know, feel oppressed and stuff. And I can understand why. But the way I see it, it's actually it's a gift that I feel like we haven't shared with people yet. You know, like when you grow up, you know, you want to go out and try all these new foods and whatnot. And now it's like the time when people are like, wow, I can like, there's Vietnamese food, there's Chinese food, there's Thai food, and Chinese food is like 50 different kinds. There's Szechuan food, there's Shenzhen food, there's like Shanghai food, like dumplings and like all kinds of stuff. And it's
we
just
almost categorize it into one.
Yeah. And I think that's a shame because that's not who we are. You see Chinese food as one thing, and you see like beef broccoli. That's what you think of, you know?
Panda Express.
Panda Express, exactly. And then, but that's something that Chinese people made up to please Americans. So that's not even Chinese food, period, to begin with. And so then I guess my further point is that there's just so much to share with people, and that's just the food part. You know, what Bruce Lee was trying to do was he was trying to bridge Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy, the way that he saw the world. And what I found very powerful about that was in the West, you know, like we are, especially in America, you know, like everybody's like, go, go, go. You got to grind. You got to work as hard as you can. But that's not the best way to live your life. You know, you're going to run yourself ragged. The other side of it that is very Eastern is Tao, you know, like everything's a flow. And that when you're working, you should be working so that your life flows and that it's not always so hard. And there's lessons like that I feel like is missed because we are exposed primarily to one philosophy. And in a lot of ways, I feel like if we can just marry these two, everybody would be so much happier.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and that's what I want. And I feel like a lot of people have discovered it, but it's still very niche. And so that's why I'm so excited about Asian American representation, especially the people who, you know, still speak their language and are still in touch with their culture, because that's all stuff I want to share. Yeah. And it's not just East and West. You know, you've got people who are from the Middle East, people from India, Pakistan, from Russia, like African, and like there's so much out there. And if you ever feel like you're bored in this world, like that means you haven't opened your eyes. Yeah. You know, so I just hope that this is something that my little actions of acting and whatever stories that I tell, especially this one in Midway, that is like a real story, I hope that it opens people's minds and, you know, makes you realize how rich the world is, but also how similar we are too.
And I think there's, not to get political because I'm not going to on this, but there is a silent majority that, there's a lot of talks about just racism and all of that now. And there's a majority like Asian Americans who do not get represented in that, or Indian don't really get, represented in that. And it's just because there's a lot on that surface level that's saying, Black Lives Matter and, a lot of that stuff, which I think has its own place and it's good.
Yeah.
There's also representation and really a remembrance of all the big melting pot we have here.
Yeah.
LA is a melting pot.
America is a melting pot. And I think that's the real talent of this country, is that we've got so many perspectives and cultures. And I can walk down the street and get Thai food, Romanian food, Russian food,
whatever you want,
Ethiopian food. It's anything you want. Mm-hmm. And if only we can learn to work together and appreciate ourselves for our differences, then how incredible would we be even more? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a shame that we sometimes forget that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Something that I think is coupled with what you brought up, and something I was kind of meditating on the last couple of days, is time. This is a big concept. I just dropped time into this whole thing.
Go for it.
If you do think about it, time as a construct is its own thing and never changes.
Yeah.
This plays in a lot to the allotted time that we give ourselves every day, especially in Hollywood or in media.
Yeah.
The amount of time it takes to do something, we always wish we had more time. Obviously, we never have enough.
Right.
But your position in life and your feelings on being an actor or any actor could feel like time feels longer because they haven't landed anything, right? Mm-hmm. Versus if somebody's booking, time feels like it's flying, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is your kind of perspective on how time flows and flies through your time in the arts? Because it's a huge thing that doesn't get talked about very much, but your moods, your feelings about a certain, topic or film all play into the speed of how fast things go.
Right. So are you talking about our perceptions of time and how...
Yeah, how it changes your perspective and on the industry and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, if I understand your question correctly, then it's kind of like you do have control over your perception of how time flows, because if you're busy, then it feels like it's going quickly, and if it's not, then it feels like it's going slowly.
Yes.
A big part of what it means to be an actor is to be self-employed. And when you're self-employed, you've got all this time in the world to fill up with, what you're going to do. And so if you're keeping yourself busy and you are figuring yourself out and believing that, every step that you take every day is going to get you to where you want to be, then you can fill up your days, and then you won't feel like, you're wasting your time, or you have a lot more control over it than you think. I used to be on the U.S. Chinese martial arts team, and that took a lot of training.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. I was training 4 hours a day.
Wow.
And what that lesson taught me was that for anything that you believe in and you are committed to, you work your ass off every day. Mm-hmm. And you wake up and you say, I'm going to spend at least this amount of time on what I'm doing. It doesn't matter what it is. Even if ends up being a waste of time, at least you figured out that it was a waste of time, So then you constantly push and train, practice and train. Yeah. It doesn't have to be hard, but you're figuring more about yourself, you don't know the answer to something when you're starting from here. You got to work yourself to here, and then you can actually see.
Yeah.
Then you can make a decision and a judgment to what you want, or where you're going, or how far you can go.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful answer. It's one of those things that I think we don't really allow ourselves to think about, or if we do, we're just pissed at the speed.
I'm not getting anywhere.
Yeah. It goes along though with kind of how you mentioned flow, earlier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The beauty of a lot of Eastern mindset, things that we don't really have here in Western, is that we do work ourselves to the bone. We don't allow ourselves to appreciate the things that we've done, or in the same way, we don't allow ourselves to take a breath.
Right.
And so one thing I wanted to ask you is the current climate of the arts, we were talking about on the break, that was great. I wish we would have recorded it, but not many really get to fully understand what it takes, right, to go into it. We talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
But so many people have to spread their horizons so broadly.
Right.
For me, I feel like I've grown as an individual because I did so many different things.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day, even going back to like my dad and starting his career and stuff, he was known as one thing, and that one thing was good enough. Right. So how would you describe like being multi-talented? Like, do you think it's a powerful thing? Like, do you think it's a move of power? Okay.
Absolutely. In our parents' time, it probably made sense to stick with one job and to get really good at it and to like make a living. But now we've got so many things out. The world is growing exponentially. Feel like we're running out of labels to label like things that people are, you know? And the people who end up coming out on top are the people who end up mixing things that are completely brand new. And if you focus on one thing, like you're never testing yourself, you're never growing, and you're never really figuring out what you truly want. And hence your uniqueness suffers. And if you never take that step, then you're never going to reach your potential. So it is my belief that, you know, you have to go out to all these different things and figure it out for yourself. I mean, you have to make enough to make a living always, obviously. But then I think you need to be growing your horizons, like whether it's career oriented or even in your personal life, you know, like if you don't express love enough to your wife, then you better learn how. You know, I had to do that a lot of times, honestly. She reminded me of it.
Here to keep you she's in the room. She's here to keep you accountable.
Yeah. She's right there.
But but totally. Yeah, that's super important. Like it's easy for us to get lost in our careers, and especially if we're driven and passionate toward it. And it's a good lesson for us to remind ourselves the importance of family, the importance of people around you, the importance of not only trying to, I mean, there's the level of competition, right? You mentioned it earlier that you do want to be better than the next person so you can get the job. Yeah. But there's also a sense that I think we need to be like a community with those people as well. It's the strangest little monotony that we go through every day, but there's competition that also, you know, I heard somebody say that it's important to, as much as you put in to your craft, to also give back the same amount or close to the same amount to somebody else or somebody on the come up.
Definitely. It's easy in the West to think that, you know, you're an independent thing. But I think little credit is given to how related and how interconnected we all really are. For example, like one thing that I had to broaden my horizons on recently was it's very easy for me to be competitive. You know, like if I don't get a part that I really wanted, then I saw the guy that booked it. I'm like, yeah, I hate him. You know, it's very easy to think that. But then after thinking about it and reading like a few books that like helped broaden my mind a bit, I realized, wow, like he ended up doing a great job on that project. And because of that, his great job, there's more jobs for me.
Right.
You know, like because he opened the door for Asian American representation, or he opened the door for this or that, suddenly I've got space to come in after him. And there's so many more ways in which I'm not even aware of that has opened the doors for me. And I think it's a really beautiful thing. You know, it's so easy to only be able to see here, but once you saw here, then you tend to appreciate everything that happens around you. Because anything that comes to you could seem like a bad thing myopically, but in the grand scheme of things, actually played out for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wanted to thank you for doing this. We're already bumping up against our time again, but I wanted to thank you for like opening up and kind of sharing about your process, your path.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
You know, I hope that I've learned over time that this show has been a way for me to not only like inform myself and grow myself through people like yourself, but also to hopefully help others. That's my drive, is to see others understand the arts in a way where they want to pursue it. Right.
Yeah.
In a way that didn't seem possible before, and what capacities they could do that in. And so I wanted to give you, in closing, like a second, if you wanted to, into camera, like talk about your film Midway that's coming out and other things like that.
Absolutely. I feel like I talked about Midway a bit. Maybe I should say Midway. I saw it last night, and it's an incredible film. I've always been a World War II aviation fan, and I've read so many stories of like what it was like back then to be a pilot and having the Air Force only be just created, and these planes were not reliable, and especially Japanese planes, were just so much better than American ones, and you had to win this war. And people were just dying left and right, not because they were getting shot down, but because, you know, their plane didn't take off from the aircraft carrier that was just invented a couple of years ago. It's just a very scary time, and Midway captured it so authentically. It was not about, you know, the special effects at all. It was like all based on these true stories that I read about when I was growing up, and I saw that in the movie, and I was like, wow, they really did their research for this.
Amazing.
And they're really commemorating the veterans who fought in the war, not just in the United States front, but on the Japanese front as well, as in the U.S. Air Force and Navy and the Japanese Air Force and Navy.
Yeah.
And something I did want to tie into too is a couple of years ago, I worked on a television series, TV miniseries called The Long Road Home, and it's based on a true story. Also, I got to meet these veterans, and I became friends with one of the veterans who that miniseries is based on, and he's doing a nonprofit called Lancer Legacy Ranch. He created it because after 10 years of post-traumatic stress disorder and all kinds of stuff from the traumas of his war experience, he came out of it, and he was like, look, I'm not going to suffer like this anymore. I need to put it back and give it back to the people that are hurting just as much as me, if not even more.
Yeah.
And so he created a home basically for homeless veterans in Maud, Texas, and he just got it started. And as somebody who, you know, is doing a film about veterans and appreciating their service, I just want to make sure that people know that there's services like that out there for them. Because in this home, like, you don't just have a place to live, but then, you know, you become a part of a community, and then you can get any kind of counseling that you want to. You want advice for how to get a new job. You want some technical training or something. They're providing all of that.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I think it's just a beautiful thing that he took this great pain of his and turned it into something beautiful to empower the people that was hurting just as much as him. So I just want to take the opportunity to say that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, where can people find you on social media and stuff? What's your tag and all that?
Social media, at the Kenny Liu. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on. I really appreciate it. Really good conversation and important. Yeah. You can find us on social media at 1 in 20 Show. Follow us on YouTube and Spotify, all that stuff. This is episode 52, which is awesome. We're just paving away, and I hope you guys are encouraged and that we can keep bringing this to you. And just keep the fight going, and just know that you're not the only one out there doing it. You've got a lot of people by your side going through the trenches with you. You can do it, and it's clear that others are, like yourself. You know, there's examples of it right here. This is a case study. It works. So anyway, find us on all that, and we'll see you guys soon.